One of the freshest. My name's Linoskiii. I thought y'all knew. Linoskiii hit me with the contact. I'm from Koreatown. I chill in mid-city.
Hi everyone, we're so excited to be back with La Serranita. We are officially kicking off our first episode. Of course, I have Meli right here with me, but we also have a very, very special guest with us today. We have Lino Perez, who is actually going to be coming back for our Las Voces Del Pueblo segment that we've been running here on YouTube. Lino, it's so great to have you back with us.
Thank you.
We're so glad to be continuing this conversation. As always, Las Voces del Pueblo is a segment that we dedicate to fostering intergenerational conversations. They're really just a place for Meli and I to document conversations with community members we've met throughout our years. And I think Lino's a perfect guest to be kicking off this segment yet again. We've known Lino for about 10 plus years now.
Over 10 years, for sure.
It's been that long?
Yeah, wow. I know, way to age us. But It's been a minute, and we actually, funny enough, connected through music, and we'll get into all that Lino has done in his lifetime, what he continues to do. I want to give you a moment to introduce yourself. I know there's a lot of stuff that you've accomplished and a lot of great things to celebrate. So go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Lino Perez, and artistically I go by Linoskiii. This is actually how I met Meli. And I am an academic. I'm a professor of kinesiology at Cal State Northridge. I've worked with probation and foster youth in the past. I've worked with children who are seeking asylum in the United States as well. And I'm a seasoned financial advisor providing financial literacy to communities who lack those resources as well. So there's a variety of things that I do. And so when you guys asked me to come on this show to kind of share my experiences, I was like, well, there's a lot. What part? What aspects? And share all of it. And I was like, okay, let's do it.
There are so many people that did reach out after the first episode of Las Voces del Pueblo, highlighting Indigenous scholars in LA. Again, props to you for being first gen, or just, even then, giving us the space to also learn more about ourselves as scholars, but knowing that there's different layers to our own identity.
Correct.
School doesn't always define us, and it's just an extra addition to our toolbox. I always feel like those are always power moves. And through hip hop, through your writing, you've gained a lot of support, but also a lot of people have had the opportunity to see themselves in your music. Like I mentioned, you are Linoskiii, but also a K-Town legend.
Say
that, okay?
Thank you. Koreatown.
Respect on his name.
No, Koreatown, I mean, there's a lot of paisanos in Koreatown, as we know, right? When the first generation of Oaxacans moved over, they all kind of landed in the Koreatown vicinity, in the Koreatown neighborhood, which is where my parents landed, which is why I grew up there. And so, going back to what you said, where people resonated with what I was saying in my music, that was a byproduct of what I was doing. I was just trying to cope with academia at the time because I am first generation. I'm an only child. I had nobody to reference to. I had nobody to look up to. I didn't know how to navigate some of the resources that were available to me, even though there were scarce. So remember, I was DACA. I was undocumented at the time that I was an undergraduate student up until 2012. So nobody really teaches us in our households, right, coming from the backgrounds that we come from, how to deal with those emotions, or how to deal with frustration, how to deal with that feeling of helplessness. And so I think at the intersection of what I do, there is always going to be movement, culture, and identity right in the middle of everything that I revolve my time around.
Lino actually joined us for our first Las Voces del Pueblo episode back in 2024.
Whoa, it's been 2 years. Wow.
2 years, and we're back. But that conversation mainly centered around, it was you, Brenda, and Luis who joined us, and it really centered around academia in terms of higher education. Now we're taking it back to mainly the beginning, K to 12.
Absolutely. So after 5th grade, the plan was actually to go back to Mexico. So I had gone back for a few months, but ultimately my mom decided to come back to the States, which was the best move. But by that time, all the schools were already in session. So by luck of the draw, schools out in Woodland Hills were not in session yet. So I enrolled in a school out there. It was Hale Middle School, right? George Ellery Hale Middle School. And so I got into Hale Middle School, which was in Woodland Hills. And at the time, for me, it was a drag because I had to wake up at 6 a.m.
Right. I'm like, what's that commute like?
To catch the bus at 6:20 so that we could get there by 7:15 or 7:30 because of traffic, right? And in the beginning, I hated it, but then afterwards, I got really used to it. So I think that's really where the perspective shifted for me, because I didn't know anything outside of Koreatown, right? And I didn't know anything outside of our neighborhood, right? And so when we get there, this is my first experience actually feeling like a minority. So in our communities, in our neighborhood, I didn't feel out of place. Everybody kind of looked like us. The businesses were Korean always. The streets were Hispanic always, right? And that's how it was in Koreatown. But when I got to Woodland Hills, I was like, oh, like this is like, I'm not the majority here. Yeah. And I started understanding, first and foremost, there was no gates, right, in the school. Like no barbed fences or anything like that. Wow. And the grasses were green, actually, right? And they sold different things.
We had fake grass.
And so there were like almost no fights, and everything was rather safe, and it was a calm environment, and I felt safe there. And so I ended up liking the commute. I ended up liking the school, and I just naturally fed into what it's called El Camino High School. Right. Okay. And that's where I ended up going to high school. Okay. But really that shift from Koreatown to Woodland Hills is what opened up my perspective. And that's when I started to change my diction. And that's when I started to change my vocabulary. And I did so by emulating the kids that I saw, right? The kids that were there. Right. And so the subculture was also different. So we're coming from like a street type of environment, right? And not that we were ever gang affiliated, but we lived in gang infested neighborhoods, and therefore we knew the unwritten rules of that nefarious world, right? So you don't snitch, you don't do this, right? You don't back out, you're not, et cetera, et cetera. And so we kind of grew up with those rules, even though we never, I never was affiliated with any sort of gang culture or gang life in any way. But you get there and it's completely different, right? And I think this is when we really have to start thinking and fostering an identity, because in elementary, everything's cool. Everything is innocence. And then when you get to middle school, that's when you have to start forming cliques, right? You get to forming into, you hang out with the kids that like the same things that you do. The kids that like skating, hang out with the kids that like skating. The kids that like punk rock, they hang out with the punk rock kids,
clique starts
right?
to form.
Oh, if you like metal, you hang out with the metal kids, right? Yeah. But for me, I wasn't an athlete. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And I just kind of gravitated towards what I knew. So I got into graffiti culture. Right? And so it was either that or nothing else, right? I wasn't really that good at skating. So graffiti was like the next best. I wasn't a gang member, right? I think when I discovered the difference between what a gangster was and what a graffiti writer was, I was like, oh, I like the graffiti aspect. Let me just,
I don't want to do the other stuff.
I was like, let me dive into that world. And so that's really when I started getting into that subculture, which came with the music, right? Which is how I got into hip hop. I got into hip hop late. I got into hip hop in sixth grade, which was for late. Late for a lot of people, right? So I was already like 11, 12 years old when I discovered hip hop. I remember my friend was bumping a Tupac CD. And I was like, hey, what's that? He said, oh, this is Tupac. And I was like, what? And I started hearing it. And I was like, oh, I like this. Yeah. Right? I like this. And then the circle of friends that I started to hang out with, they all listened to hip hop, right? And so that's kind of how I got introduced to the music. But as I got deeper into graffiti culture, I started getting exposed to what they termed underground hip hop. And they're like, this is underground hip hop. And I was like, what is that? It's like, oh, these are like artists that don't have a label. These are artists that they're independent and they just kind of put it out. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, so you can't hear this on the radio? No. And that was my introduction to Psycho Round in 7th grade. Right? And so that was the first underground hip hop group that I discovered. And I was like, what? They're from Pico Union? Yeah. And I was like, oh, what? They're like Mexicans? They're Mexican Americans? I was like, no way. And that led me into a completely different world. That's how I discovered Tumex. I discovered all these underground artists. I discovered Pecado, like all these artists that were also brown. And I was like, I didn't know this world existed. And I dove deep into that world, right? And that's how I got into the music aspect of it.
I think there's something very powerful in that, just in terms of music and being in a part of LA and like just that is more white centered, or,
Yes.
like you said, just so different from what our communities look like. But then during that, navigating that new community, discovering artists that look and sound like you.
That was big for me because, mind you, I'm coming from wearing AAA shirts and polo shirts, and pro club shirts, right? And Dickies and K-Swiss and Pumas with fat laces.
Yeah.
But over there, when I was going to school, what was in was wearing Hollister, right? American Eagle, right? And that was in there. Or the skating scene was in. They were wearing DC shoes, and I didn't gravitate towards that because I had a certain affinity towards the people from my neighborhood and what I idolized at the time, right? And so it was different. I had a shaved head, right?
Oh, okay,
right? And they had shaggy hair with the little skater look.
Yeah.
And so it was different. But at the same time, I think what made me stand out to my teachers was that I was always on point with my academics. So I didn't really reflect the stereotypical Latino that got bussed into the school in a suburb, right? And so I think that made me stand out to a lot of my teachers, including now, even my 8th grade history teacher. I still keep in touch with her.
No way.
Yeah. Shout out.
so
That's Miss Arison, now Miss Park. She's married.
Wow. Shout out to our educators.
Shout out to Miss Park. So my educators were, I guess you can call them my first mentors, right? The first people to kind of guide me, who were able to see something in me that I wasn't able to see at the time, right? And so, yeah, shout out to all the great educators that are out there in the system.
Yeah, who turn into mentors, our first ever mentors, because I could relate to that. My high school English teacher, I always credit her for like me ending up at Berkeley and even wanting to think outside of just leaving Pico Union.
I still talk to my high school English teacher. She was another mentor of
Our
mine.
English teachers are really
Mrs. Owen. Mrs. Owen. I go to concerts with her.
No
I go to the
way.
Walt Disney Concert Hall with her, listen to certain like music, and it's great. I still keep in touch with her.
Love that.
Yeah, the culture shock is definitely a big thing that I feel like millennials, more than anything, have added their input throughout the years with what a difference it made being from these smaller communities in LA and having to make or understand exactly how to move in new spaces. The San Fernando Valley definitely met a lot of us.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of us individually have a lot to like reflect back on. I personally, even gender-wise, like I think you had a different experience. I ended up not always loving my commute, or even then the opportunities that came with it were also granted only because I actually spoke up and wanted those. I was actually seeking those opportunities. If I think I would have stayed a shy girl, which at times I am, but even then, I think I looked for a lot of the resources and even conversations there. And I feel like if I wouldn't have, I think I would have just kind of passed my grades and like passed along or grown up and not really learned from my own time in the Valley. It was always very interesting to see the difference between my older sister and then my journey compared to Ani's journey, who never left LA, never left Pico Union.
Yeah, we talk about that. So our older sister, she's 10 years older than me, and she was the first one to get bussed out pretty much elementary to high school.
Wow.
And then was the first one in our entire family to go to college.
Got it.
And our parents very much were like, this is what attending predominantly white schools gets you, university, college. And Meli was kind of the next in line. My mom, our parents were just kind of like, you're doing the same thing Gadi did. And Meli was kind of like, I like my community. Like, I don't want to be in another school. It's just, it feels like exploring a whole new world, you know? And then when I was getting ready to finish my time at our elementary school in Pico Union, they were entertaining the conversation of me also getting bussed out from middle school. And I quickly shut it down. I'm like, nope. I'm like, my best friend's going to this middle school, so I'm going to this middle school. And it was like puro capricho.
Yeah.
But honestly, I appreciate it because Meli and I, oftentimes we sit down and we talk about her middle school to high school experience and then mine just staying in Pico Union. And I do relate to what you said in terms of your elementary experience. Like, staying in the neighborhood, it's all you know sometimes, because what you went through for middle school, I went through when I moved to Berkeley.
Gotcha.
And that's a big campus, and it's so many white folks, white and Asian folks. The class difference is insane, and that was like going through that times 10. And I was just like, I stayed in like my area, which I love. I missed it, but then also, it showed me like what it was to navigate two completely different worlds.
Yeah, and I got that early on, and I think, having gone out to Woodland Hills since I was 11 years old for 6th grade all the way through 12th grade, it really groomed me in the mannerisms that I needed, I guess, in order to succeed later on in life, and how to address teachers correctly, right? Because I mean, you got kids from the neighborhood that got bussed out, and so I was able to see the way they talked to the teachers when they were upset versus the way that kids that grew up there talked to the teachers when they were upset, and the difference in the way that they communicated their thoughts and articulated their words. And I saw which one the teacher was more responsive to, right? And so I was very observant, and I was like, okay, I need to emulate that. I need to copy the way that they talk, the way that they act, the way that they do certain things. And I did that at first in a comedic way. Okay. Because I didn't want to get ridiculed by my own peers, right? So everything felt in a comedic way. So I would use random big words, like in a very comedic manner,
like to just like ease it in there.
To ease it in. Absolutely. You can ask my friends this too. I did it.
Because you will get punked on,
right?
By hood kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you come here using big vocabulary, big words, all that, it's like, I relate to that because of our older sister. She taught us like good mannerisms, thank God, but other kids in the neighborhood don't have that. Don't have other like older siblings or even mentors to teach them like, this is how you communicate with adults. This is how you respond to healthy communication. It's like they, to each their own. Some people have different experiences, but I think my older sister a lot because at a young age, like I would say definitely in high school is when kids started acting up even more. I think middle school is also just a whole different, I don't know, kids are going through so much at that time, but high school, it's like you're maturing. So you're realizing I need to check myself, and I also am like becoming an adult, so I need to learn how to talk to adults.
Yes.
And I feel like my older sister really helped me with my vocabulary and all that, but I can relate to when I started changing the words I used, or I was vegetarian in high school.
Wow.
And to my friends, mind you, I was like, I think the only vegetarian in Pico Union. And they were like, that's so white of you. Like, why? And I'm like, I just care about the animals and I don't want to eat meat. And also when I would use like big words, they said I talk like a white person. And I know that's something that a lot of people can relate to when you grow up with your like predominantly BIPOC community, and then you switch up like how you speak. Like that code switch really helped me when I got to Berkeley. But at the time in high school, I kind of didn't want to have that code switch, like the words that I would use, because you get kind of ridiculed for it. They call you out and they're like, you think you're better than us?
Exactly. Yeah. So I always use comedy as a way to kind of ease things out until I got comfortable in my own skin, using the words, speaking in a certain manner. Yeah. And then it was just a matter of, switching it on and off, right? With the homies, you speak a certain way. With your teachers, you speak a certain way.
Master it.
Yeah, you absolutely. And so that's why I always enjoyed English, because we would have vocab words, and we had to like write out like the words and use them in a sentence, et cetera. And I was able to pick up a lot of things from there. But it was really a good experience. Like I said, from middle school to about high school, I was pretty much groomed in writing and speaking, et cetera. So when I got to college, it was an easier transition for me. But then my eyes were opened up even more in college, because there was even more things to learn and other things to understand, right? Yeah. And so it's definitely been a journey, and definitely something that I had to work on was gaining acceptance from my community while being able to navigate the new environment that I was in high school. And I think what kept me, which is part of the reason why I stayed in graffiti culture for so long, because it was like, well, I do this. So I'm accepted within the culture, right? I'm accepted within our neighborhood because I'm doing these types of extracurricular activities that are accepted within our neighborhood, right? Yeah. Either that or gangbanging, and I'm not anywhere near gangbanging, right? And so I'm not anywhere near that, right? So did that for a while till I got to college. And then in college, I kind of left that. And that's kind of when I switched from the graffiti scene to the music scene. And I started recording. I actually referenced it in one of my songs. I said, I put the what did I say in recap? I said, I put the aerosol down, picked up a mic, son, because everything released won't get buffed out in one night, son. So sometimes you go and like paint the freeway, and then the next day it got painted over, you know. Yeah. But if you record something, you put it out, it's going to be out there forever. Yeah. So
you can't paint over that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was a healthier way to express myself. I still had that outlet because I think I've always needed some sort of outlet, and I think music really did that for me. It gave me a language before I even understood my own voice. It was a safe space to, storytell, to express the way that I was feeling. And if I didn't feel like being vulnerable, then I could write it in third person as if it was for somebody else. And it allowed me to deal with, I guess, what you would call trauma, right? And you just put it out there. And then people, right, like Melly and other people would relate to it, which was not my goal, but it was something that was a nice, like I said, a nice byproduct of the music that I was releasing, because I didn't know that there were other people that were relating to the themes that I was talking about, first generation, navigating college, trying to understand how to navigate that world. And so I was lucky enough to find a nice support system out there of other young Latino men that were also first generation that were trying to actually graduate as well. And that's when I first understood, like, oh, there are other people that are first gen that are smart and even smarter than I am that I could learn from, and that's one thing that I've always been open to is personal growth. So if there is somebody that knows more than I do, I'm going to sit down and listen.
Yeah, you could learn from them, of course. I could learn from them. Yeah. And I think many of my peers make the mistake of maybe dismissing them because they might be younger, right? And I'm like, hey, you know what? If you're more knowledgeable than I am, let me learn from you. Yeah, yeah, that's true. I think going back to your music, the history you have with music, I think naturally it's something that it became a natural after effect of you releasing songs. Like people in the neighborhood just related to it. We Pico Union's like neighboring to K-Town, right? And so when we found out, you were repping K-Town, we heard of you through On a High Note, through the Cypher Effect, underground hip hop, right? Yeah. Doing its thing, and then the rise of YouTube and all that. Correct. Helped us find your music. And that's actually how we first heard of you, through your music. And again, for those that don't know, Lino used to release music under Linoskiii. Yeah. And we met Linoskiii before we met Lino.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
And I think definitely your lyricism is what caught our attention. Thank you. Again, just expressing what it is to navigate higher education spaces, but also then go back to your neighborhood and your family and your community, and sometimes your friends that don't pursue higher education. That's and right. That are comfortable living the life they've always lived. And it's always like a culture shock, but also like where I've heard you in one of your songs questioning, like, where do I fit in to this?
That was always a question when I was an undergraduate, right? And I struggle with it actually as an undergrad because, for example, I grew up Oaxacan in Los Angeles. Right. So it's one thing to grow up Mexican American in Los Angeles, and it's another thing to grow up Oaxacan in a space that doesn't really understand what that means. Right. Hey, we're a very indigenous state. It's confusing to people when I tell them that, hey, my father's first language was not Spanish. It was Zapoteco, and people don't really understand what that means. Yeah. So it was difficult, but you mask it under, I'm Mexican, and it just flies under the radar, right? It was like that since I was a kid. What's your favorite food? Tacos, right? When it's really, it's caldo de carne seca from Yalala, right? Caldo de res, right? Con tamal de frijol. Like, who am I going to tell that to?
Like a taco de tasajo, and then they're like, what?
Yeah, right? So I can't share these things with everybody. It wasn't well known then, but now everybody knows, Tlayudas. Everybody, oh, Oaxaca's so beautiful. And people would tell me this in high school. And honestly, I would feel a sense of resentment because I was undocumented and I couldn't visit the place that I was born in. And so I felt like there were other people that weren't from there that were enjoying it without me having the ability to enjoy where I was from.
That's real.
So there was this like feeling of resentment in high school. There was this feeling of like the world owes me this and that. Really, the world doesn't owe you anything. You just have to navigate and understand how to deal with those emotions, right?
But as a teen, you have a sense of entitlement because you just don't understand that yet. It's like, the world does owe me this. Like you grew up and you're like, no.
And so I grew up Oaxacan, or we grew up Oaxacan in space that didn't understand what it was like to be Oaxacan. And then for me, music has always played a role in my life. So for example, I played with the Banda Filarmónica de Yalala. I grew up playing traditional música de la sierra, right? Sones y jarabes and all that stuff that comes with their culture, right?
Yeah, we grew up with the banda too,
right?
Yeah.
But so originally, I was taught how to play with paisanos from Yatzach el Bajo. And my music teacher, his name is Ezequiel Guzman. And he is the first person to teach me music and solfeo, like las notas, right? How to read music. And there were other kids that were there learning music at the same time. So that was kind of encouraging, right? And they were my age and they were Oaxacan and their parents were from Yatzach el Bajo. It just so happened that my mom knew somebody from there and she told him like, hey, my son wants to learn music. You think he can go? And that's how I integrated myself in there. But then slowly all the kids started dwindling away and nobody wanted to go anymore. And I was the last one left. And then I became like shy. I didn't want to go anymore because I was the only one. And my father, being the charismatic social person that he is, he had friends from Yalala. And he became my padrino later. My padrino Crispin was like, hey, you know what? We have some kids that we're showing them how to play music and you should bring them over and have them check it out. And at first I was reluctant because I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And my dad's like, just go check it out, see if you like it. And I went and there was a bunch of kids my age, right? Actually, Ruben, he was a little kid and he was learning how to play music there as well. And so I got there and I was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And then I started playing with the paisanos from Yalala. And so my mom's parents are from Yalala and she knows a lot of people from Yalala. My older tias were born in Yalala and then everybody after that was born in my dad's pueblo. But that's really where I met my circle of friends, my Oaxacan friends that were also from LA. But even then I was still different because I was the only one born in Oaxaca. I was the only one undocumented. Everybody else was Oaxacan born in LA, right?
Okay.
Oaxacan descendant born in LA. So at least they understood like where I come from, at least they understood what our culture was like. I had somebody to share similarities with. I had a support system.
But there's still something a little isolating about they understand like what home looks like and what it is, but they could go back and
they could go back to the pueblo. They could go back there. And then even the adults just assumed that I was one of them. It's like, oh, ya has ido a Oaxaca. And I have to remind them like, oh, no, es que yo nací allá. Sí, no, like se me olvidó, because I was brought here at 2. So it's pretty much like I grew up here. This is all I know.
Very
you understand?
True.
But that's how I related to the Yalala culture in Los Angeles. I know if I go to Yalala now, I haven't been to Yalala, right? But if I go to Yalala now, I know that there's people there that I know, right? And my tias have houses there, right? El barrio de Santa Rosa, And so I know that I have a connection there. I know that, everybody, we always identify by last names. Oh, ¿cómo te apellidas?
Very
true.
Conoces
eres pariente de ta-da-da-da-da. And then they identify you right away. Yes. Oh, yeah, you're part of ours.
They're quick with it. That is very true. And I think I want to touch back on the fact that even the way you approached educators or your time in the Valley, being Oaxacan also plays a big role because mannerism was big. I don't know about you, but I know with elders, o si no saludabas, o si no, they would take note on it. And it was always like, buenos días, buenas tardes. Even entering spaces that you were not familiar with, by the last name, you would already get asked like, oh, eres pariente de tal, o eres nieta de. And quickly, I also realized like that was already a given. Like you had to go say hi to folks. And if it was a huge room, everyone de la mano. And I was very rebellious in my teen years, but even then I was always, because of my mom being the social butterfly that she is, like I was always addressed with that like enthusiasm or also like that respect because my mom like really raised us to be as present as possible in the pueblo's activities, fiestas, or even just meetings. And they already knew like, oh, es hija de Carmen. And I couldn't get away with like not saying hi because I had an uncle. We actually do like our uncle, también de la Sierra. He passed away in 2013, but he was a musician. Always grew up loving music. And when he came to the US, he of course had to adapt and like get a 9-to-5. But weekends was always música, gigs, la banda. When we got into la banda and I, as the rebellious middle school student that I was like, I don't want to do this on my weekends anymore. Please, like, do not pick me up anymore. I don't want to go. And there were so many other things that played a factor. Yeah. I was like, you know what? I don't always have to invite my friends over, but I want to hang out with my friends. And Annie still kept wanting to go. So my uncle kept insisting, like, at least you stay. Yes. And he was a little disappointed because he also realized, oh, Melly is the rebellious type to also listen to music outside of our música regional or tradicional.
Yes.
And I was like very much on YouTube. Keep in mind Gen Z. And I love being able to discover new artists, which is how I found you on YouTube. And I just remember also becoming such a fan because of my commute from Pico Union all the way to the San Fernando Valley. I had to play a good playlist, and then was on the metro, on the underground, and would come home and tell Annie, like, have you heard this song?
Yeah.
Like,
I credit Melly. Melly put me onto the best music when I was like 11, 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's the reason why I was listening to good hip hop music too. Yeah. But I think that's why like the On a High Note crew was a perfect like, I don't know, a group to gravitate to because it had members from the San Fernando Valley and LA.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect combo. Yeah. Like that was us right there.
And San Gabriel Valley too.
All boys, and we were only girls in the house. So at times my mom would come in and she'd be like, ¿Qué estás escuchando? Yeah. Or she would like hooks and she's like, esa canción me gusta. Would not know what they were saying. And I was over here like, replay.
That's so funny. But that brings me back to growing up Oaxacan in LA, because just like you, I stopped going to the banda practices because I wanted to engage in what academia calls subcultures, right? I wanted to engage in different subcultures. I wanted to go out with my friends and do these things and do other activities without realizing at the time that what my parents had given me through this music was tradition. It was culture, right? It was values. It was customs that were passed down from generation to generation. And I'm over here as a teen, like dismissing it, like, no, I don't want to. I want to do something else. Now that I'm older, I'm in my mid-30s, I reflect back on it now. And I was like, wow, I'm very fortunate and I'm very lucky to have had that culture, had those traditions and customs passed down to me, because when I was able to go back to Oaxaca finally as an adult, I went back for 2 months, right? Thankfully, my situation is better now. I have a green card. I'm a permanent resident of the United States of America. I'm up for citizenship next year.
Yes.
But no, I went back and I didn't feel out of place in Oaxaca because I knew the music. I knew the sounds. There were convitas in the streets, right? And I knew the sounds. I was like, I know these sounds. I'm at home. I know exactly what this, I know how to play that. If somebody gave me an E-flat clarinet, I know how to play these sones y jarabes. So I didn't feel out of place. And I just felt like it was such a breath of fresh air to finally go back, right? And finally explore the city that I was born in. Because I was born in the main city. I wasn't born in the pueblo. I was born in the city.
Okay.
And so I was able to explore the city. I got to know the city in and out. I've got my little crew out there. When I go out there, I know the spots that I'm going to hit up. I know where to go.
Okay, we got to explore the city with you.
Let me know. Yeah. I got the spots.
We talk a lot about, luckily, thanks to our parents early on, would visit Oaxaca a lot. But we talk about this a lot now, especially with Oaxaca being so popular. Mm-hmm. Anytime we bring up that we're Oaxacan, they're like, wow, do you know this spot, mainly like in the city or like the touristy areas. And we're like, I've actually never been there. Yeah. And it's like every time I go to Oaxaca, I stop by the city for like my regalitos and the recuerdos and all that. But I'm mainly in my mom's pueblo 90% of the time.
Is that Yalina?
Yalina,
right? We have to pass through Yalina to get to my dad's pueblo.
Oh, okay.
So it's further.
Oh, wow.
Further in. Yeah,
you pass by the pueblo a ver qué día entras. You get to see a fiesta. I would love to experience like a Oaxaca trip because again, I mentioned this off camera, but Yalala is on my list. I want to visit soon.
So much love for Yalala.
Pero ellos tienen una fiesta cada mes. Like.
No, seriously.
Something's always good.
I think we were trying to meet up with Sandy in the pueblo one time. And no los alcanzó, but we're like, Yalala's always having a party. We'll make it happen.
Yeah. And similar to you, people are always like, oh, have you been to Oaxaca for la Guelaguetza? Right? Yeah. For la Guelaguetza. And the thing is, I never have. Because during those times, it's like around July 25th or so, my dad's pueblo has a fiesta, fiesta de Santiago Apóstol. was the patron saint of the pueblo.
Okay.
And so I've never been in the city for it because I'm in my dad's pueblo celebrating the Fiesta del Pueblo, which is great because it's only people from that pueblo, right? There's no tourists. There's nobody there. It's strictly still untouched in my eyes and in my perspective.
No, and that's so much better. I mean, our mom has always been vocal about the Guelaguetza and the start of it because it started off by exploring the communities, the pueblos, you know, and
Right.
it's nice now seeing like the exposure Oaxaca is getting, but always keeping like the central Pueblo people in mind is the most important thing.
I always explain it to people because they're like, oh, the Guelaguetza. And I was like, you know what it is imagine Oaxaca is like 8 little different countries. We have 8 different regions with all those regions having their own cultures and customs, right? And so the Guelaguetza is a festival where all 8 regions can come and kind of share their cultures and customs. So you got, you know, the paisanos from the costa, you got the paisanos from the sierra, which is us. And I always tell people, my culture is from the sierra, you know, like I'm from there, you know, because I'll meet another person from Oaxaca, but they're from the coast. They know nothing to do with the sierra.
No, and Oaxaca's huge. So they're like, if they're from the costa, they're like, I've never been to la sierra. We've never been to la costa.
Same.
And it's like, there's so much to continue exploring in Oaxaca.
Yeah.
It is huge. And I think that's also the beauty of even this conversation. The fact that only because we're Oaxacan does not mean we're all identical. It's not a one size fits all. And that's the beauty of getting to meet people throughout the diaspora in terms of even realizing that folks have made their own identity and love hip hop, but have never left Oaxaca. Maybe have gone to Mexico City, maybe have gone to different states, but have not come to the U.S. And then us who at times only knew L.A. and then have joined our families back in the pueblos, and then seeing that dynamic and the love music has, it's very interesting. I think it's a gift that now as a younger generation we get to even analyze or even just think about and have conversations like these, because creo que para ser oaxaqueño todos traen un amor para la música.
You have to.
Y el baile.
Y el baile. Of course, like
you have
with
to.
celebrations, like music brings everyone together. And it's like they're part, la banda del pueblo is part of everyone's life, in the good, the bad. They're always
present,
there.
for all the moments. They're there at the funerals, they're there at the fiestas,
Correct.
they're there, you know, at the quinceañeras, whatever it is that y'all are doing, like they will be there.
The banda's always there.
As long
not
as
a
you
Oaxacan
provide
party.
food and yes, now like the drinks, it's a given that they'll be there.
Right,
And I think that's a beauty that our pueblos, being so far out of the main city, is a beauty, and it's something that we should continue like respecting, studying, but also participating in. Right now, in our mom's hometown, ahorita, de hecho, the Fiesta Patronal is currently on.
Oh, nice.
It just started 2 days ago, and last year I had the chance of being there when it happened. And so it's been very interesting. Due to school, like we couldn't go in the springtime, because siempre es, it's always like at the start of May, and then our second party is in August. So that's like mid-August. And that one we got to go when we were kids, and we would stay like 2-3 months. And at times it was also like 3 months as a child. It was phone calls. I wanted to come back. I was like, please, I need to be back in LA.
I'm like, I said a month. I'm here all summer.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I hope as you get to like also see the beauty of Oaxaca, you get to experience more.
Yeah, and going back to that though, like that feels like a long time, and it is a long time, like an entire summer, especially at a young age. Again, like that little sense of entitlement where it's like, I want to go back to LA with my friends. Like they're spending summer over there, and I'm here in the pueblo. Like there's nothing to do here. Wi-Fi wasn't like working.
I know,
well, like,
there's no Wi-Fi. Yeah.
So it's like you really had to get creative, and you know, luckily we always had like we were able to keep each other company, but. Now I feel like that feels like a gift. Being able to go as an adult for 2-3 months, no disruptions, nothing, just being in the pueblo, and like to me that seems like a vacation.
You know, the pueblo is the only place where I can fully fall asleep and rest without worrying about anything. because I know that there's no way, like I can't access my phone even if I wake up early. I can't access it. You know, there's really nothing that I have to do. That's why I'm out there. You know,
it's so quiet.
I took care of everything here.
Compared to us being city kids,
Yes.
being out there, best sleep of my life.
Same. And I'm able to rest, and I feel rested because I know that I have nothing to do the next day other than wake up and say hi to my tia, who probably has some nice café de olla already, you know, and
like all you do there, well, at least like when we visit, like eat, spend time with family, like unplug from all the worries that come with living in the States.
You know, it's funny because they asked me if I've been to certain like archaeological sites or anything. I was like, I've been to none. I know good places to eat though. So
that's why I'm like, we need to explore the city with you.
I've been to all the restaurants, all the gastronomy in Oaxaca. I've pretty much been through the whole one, all the major ones in the city I've been to. But if you talk to me about, oh, have you been to Mitla and have you been to Montalban, which is not that far anyway. I have not. I'm sorry. I was too busy like eating in the city and making acquaintances with different panaderias or restaurant shops, etc.
Nice. I'm like, the food is where it's at though. So
Absolutely.
I think you're doing it right. Yeah.
But on my list is also the art scene. I feel like the art scene in Oaxaca is beautiful. The fact that people now, as millennials, Gen Z, there's this aesthetic of like plain, or what would it be? Like minimalism, that like home aesthetic. Oaxaqueños have always been surrounded by color. And I think that's something with me at a very young age. Like I knew I was always going to gravitate towards the art, because without my parents ever taking on an artistic title, they always express themselves very boldly with that color, like even just sketching. I always found that very creative. And I, to this day, really think that Oaxaqueños are just creative individuals. Like we're bound to find a creative expression, and yours was writing, music, photography has always been like my cup of tea. And it also that passion grew in Oaxaca because I was young, going over there with the point and shoot that I was gifted, and I loved it. So I would bring those photos back, share what was going on here, what we were celebrating, and then when I would return, I would also share that with my cousins more than anything. And now through social media, yesterday I was streaming the Fiesta live. I was like, I'm not there, but I'm there through Facebook Live, and I appreciate it so much, because now even having conversations with like the elders, I'm like, oh, that's also how they feel connected to being home. Yeah. They don't have to, or they can't like call off for 2 weeks and go to the fiesta. So they just stream it on YouTube or Facebook, and that's the beauty. Now they get to replay it. So it's also that nostalgia and the development of technology. I know it's like also very interesting to keep in mind that the pueblos at times don't even have access to Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Yeah, like LA has like quick, fast stream internet, and now I'm like, okay, how do we make it accessible over there? And who do we talk to? So it's been, as an adult, now that I've grown into like a lot of the understanding of why the pueblos have the traditions or even the roles they have, like el presidente, or how do you go about being part of the municipio, and like all of the ins and outs of political takes in Oaxaca. I now get to actually have not input, because I'm like, I get it. I was born in LA, was not born in the pueblo, but I would like to know before I overstep.
You know what? That's an interesting point, because a lot of people don't know that we still pay dues to the pueblo, even though we live here. So there's a comisión here that comes and knocks at your door, and te toca la cooperación del pueblo, and you have to give some money, and that money gets sent to the pueblo, and that's how they're able to maintain the fiestas, right? But how do you explain that to other Mexicans? Like, hey, so we still got to pay dues to the pueblo that we're from, because if not, like, they'll take your property and your land, and so you got to pay your dues, because that's just how it works, right? So I think I don't know if that's with a lot of Mexicans or just us, but that's something that I grew up seeing, right? Oh, la comision's at the door. Like, we got to give them like...
That's a good point. I don't know if it's a thing within other like Mexican cultures. And I think, again, like that's what makes that, among so many other things, is what makes Oaxaca so unique. Like, and also the way we've been able to preserve a lot of our traditions and we talk a lot, at least within our friend group, like this whole thing of gatekeeping and all that. I'm like, Oaxacans have been able to stay authentically Oaxacan because we don't let just anyone in the pueblo.
The pueblos are autonomous, by the way. It's not like the government says like, oh, this is who's appointed or this is who's like, they're autonomous. So they decide who their police are going to be, right, for that term. And it's not like they're wearing uniforms or anything. It's just, hey, tú vas a ser policía este año. You know?
And them having to sleep during the time like we're asleep, they actually have to stay up and just take care of the pueblo. I find that so scary because I'm like, oh my gosh, what happens at the night? Like, very interesting, spooky stories that I've heard.
Duendes.
Yeah, the duendes.
We could have a whole talk on like spooky stories from Oaxaca.
God, it's funny.
It's so interesting. And I am there. I'm like, and this is why I know in the long term I get to write stories and make films because they're so interesting. I'm like, this is so cool to learn about, but now I'm spooked. So I have to walk a certain way, like make sure I avoid certain spaces if I'm alone, because I think at a young age, it was like, okay, they're telling you this to scare you so you don't do this on your own or para que no te pierdas. I'm like, but what if like as an adult, I'm like, what if you do get lost? Like what happens? So it's been interesting.
I want to take it back to the duendes too, just because like I could always talk about the duendes. But I think growing up, I remember I used to tell my friends about the duendes and like, do you know the stories of Oaxaca? And they would be like, what? And like, they would be Mexican, but not Oaxacan.
Yes.
So they were like, I didn't know. And then again, the whole duendes aren't real. Like, I'm like, I don't know. I think duendes are real.
Little goblins that come and take your stuff and move it somewhere else.
they be playing jokes on you.
Right.
And like, I think now this was what, like 20 years ago, I guess. But the reaction would be so different, especially as young kids. Like, that's not real. You know, it's just a story. But now we see duendes in even just film, like different interpretations of film, TV. Duendes have become an aspect of storytelling. And now also it's a bit more believable that duendes are, you know, present in Oaxaca. And I think also through that access of YouTube and the internet and like storytelling, it's less surprising when you tell someone about a duende or something.
I looked it up one time. Like I went on Google and I was like, duendes, Mexico, Oaxaca. Yeah, you know, it's like folklore across most Central America, Latin America, and Mexico. And I'm just like, I don't know. I keep hearing about it ever since I was a child, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny. But, you know, the little things like that we're able to share and we know what we're talking about, right? So that always feels good to be able to share something with somebody and they know exactly what you're talking about, what you having to over-explain to understand the concept.
Yeah, I think that's why I wanted to bring up the duendes. Like, and again, going back to the duendes, the food, the music, it's always so comforting when you find someone who you don't have to over-explain what you're talking about or explain at all. Yeah. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
For a long time, because I have my foot in all these different circles and I wear different hats here and there, I always try to keep them. I tried for a long time to keep them all separate. So my perspective was, oh, well, like my street crowd isn't going to understand my academic crowd and vice versa, or what is my academic crowd going to think of my friends over here and their mannerisms, and then vice versa as well. And so I was always very conflicted about, oh, like, let me go into this space and this is how I'm going to be in this space. Or let me get out of this. Let me go to this other space and this is how I'm going to behave and act in this other space, and I'm going to dress a certain way here, right? And so I came to realize finally as an older adult, well, not older adult, but as an adult now, right, that identity is not something you find, it's something that you build over time. And so rather than seeing all these different hats that I wear as conflicting, I see them as complementary to each other now and helping shape who I become. So you call them socializing agents or people that of influence in your life, right? Your teachers, coaches, your peers, they influenced and had a role in the identity that I developed, the crowds that I hung out with, the mannerisms in those crowds, it all kind of entailed me. And so now I don't separate them. Now I just am who I am, right? Sometimes I feel like, you know, wearing some fly New Balance and some streetwear. And other times I feel like wearing, you know, a suit, right?
We all suited up.
We all
It's
suited up. Or sometimes I feel like being, you know, business casual. So I just kind of play it by ear now. Everything kind of just, I learned to accept all aspects of my life and all of them contribute to who I am. You know, finally.
That was very well put. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. The whole topic of exploring your identity and what that means changes for everyone, right? But I think there are some common patterns that we see because I agree. I think I was kind of the same growing up. Like, okay, maybe I could be like this way with my friends because they're my friends, but I can't be like that with my teachers or with now my boss or something, you know? And now things are a little bit, I don't know if like laid back, but people have, first generation kids have been changing the norms. And I think back then with our mom, we talk a lot about the tattoos and all of that. She hated when we got tattoos. Of course,
my mom too.
Yeah, and it's a whole
it's taboo.
Yeah, and like the Mexican mom thing of no one's gonna hire you.
Right.
No one's gonna take you seriously. And it's like, why?
Have you seen the guy at my cafe? Like
yeah. And you know, like I was I think finishing high school when I got my first tattoo. Whoa. And she was like, no, like that one and that's it. And now I have like my whole arm, you know?
Yeah,
and I'm just like, I don't think that's gonna make a difference. Like because I know who I am and I know what I bring to the table and I need to trust that. And I need to trust that, yeah, sometimes I don't know the biggest words, but I know how to get my point across with using simple words or something. Or sometimes I know that I can like dress a certain way, but I still show up to the room as professional as possible because that's who I am.
I know exactly what you mean because I tell some of my friends, you know, that didn't go the academic route, and I tell them, look, the only difference between you and I is that I learned how to articulate my words a little better and I learned how to control my emotions. That's it. That's the only thing that made me more successful, quote unquote, in this society. That's really it. Learning how to articulate what you want to say and learning how to control your emotions. And that's it. I want to bring it back to, I don't know if you both went through this when you guys were in high school, but this is when like you're trying to find your identity, right? And getting to college and getting in high school, discovering Chicano culture was like, oh, like I can fit in here, right? Oh, this is a space with other Mexicans, and I gravitate towards it, and I kind of got myself nourished. I got my nourishment from the Chicano culture for a while throughout high school, transitioning into college, right? You had the Chicano studies department, and so it was a big department. Rest in peace, Rudy Acuña, who just passed away.
Very historical.
So I took a class with him actually. And so I took a lot of classes in the Chicano studies department, but then that's when I learned about like indigenous movements. And I was like, wait a minute, like, do I really fit into the Chicano movements or cause I'm Oaxacan, you know? I was like, I'm indigenous myself. And I was like, I had that other conflict now where I have felt like I discovered myself and I felt like I had a place where I belonged. Then getting to college and having more knowledge, it created a completely different dilemma for me, right?
And
it's
more
like
questions.
And so I'm like, so man, can I be in both or do I have to choose one or the other? Right?
No, that's so real. I'm glad you brought that up because I relate to it. In high school, I was taking dual courses. So I was taking community college classes during the weekends. And my first class was a Chicano study class. Actually, no, my first class was Central American Studies, then Chicano Studies. And Central American Studies, I knew I'm not Central American, but I love learning the history, all of it. So I enjoyed that class. Then my professor, who's actually now Meli's longtime mentor too, she recommended me for the Chicano Studies, I guess assuming that I was Chicana. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I saw it the same as Central American Studies. Like, I'm not Chicana, but I want to learn about the history. I know Chicanismo has a lot of history, especially in LA. Like, it'd be great. And it's a room full of kids who look like me. So might as well, you know, be in a classroom with kids that look like me. And at that time, I was very, very like, my mom always taught us to introduce ourselves as Zapotec, indigenous, Oaxaqueñas.
That's great.
I think just simple, it is Oaxaqueña. That's it. And I like didn't get into my head about it until I got to the Chicano Studies course. And I was like, am I Chicana? And I'm like, the way they were describing it, and then, you know, the professor just talking to all of us. And I'm like, I'm like, I guess I am.
Right.
And because in the textbooks, they don't talk about Oaxaqueños. They don't talk about
indigenous.
like, you know, indigenous people like that. Like, and so I was just like, yeah, sure. And I think at some point I was talking to my parents about it. And I was like, well, I guess I'm Chicana. And they looked at me and they kind of were also like, wait, are you? Because the Mexican American, in a sense, you are.
Yeah.
And they were like, and my mom was like, but you're Oaxaqueña. Like, first and foremost, you're Oaxaqueña. Like, yeah, you could be Chicana, but you're Oaxacan. And I was like, does that not fall under the category of Chicano? Like, the identity? So that's when I started questioning, like, wait, so why don't we have a Oaxacan course for those who aren't like Chicano?
Or an indigenous course,
an indigenous
right?
studies course. And so I was like, I wonder if that's available. But because I had a limited option of courses for high school, I was like, maybe in college that'll be a thing. I got to Berkeley, and I saw that a lot of the few Oaxaqueños that I knew, the few Latino indigenous people that I knew, they fell under that funnel of Chicanismo. And I was like, wait, are you guys going there because you genuinely want to get a degree in Chicano studies? Or is it because that's the closest thing you had to indigenous
to your
studies?
culture? Oh, that's wow.
And they were like, the second one. And funny enough, that during my time at Berkeley, that's where we started, and we've talked about this. We started seeing not a trend, but oh wow, Berkeley has a lot of Oaxacan students.
Wow.
That I think is a gift that I want to, make use of this community space. Some friends of mine started a Oaxacan course that's student led at Berkeley.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that was the first ever of its kind. And I knew I want to say 5 Oaxacans. And to me, that was a lot, where I'm like, wow, this is so cool. When the course started and I joined the course and I was helping my friends, that entire room was Oaxacan.
Oh, that's great.
And we're like, wait, all of you are Oaxacan? And Berkeley accepted all of us at the same time? Like, this is amazing. And so we were like, let's make use of being in a classroom, but also learning about each other's where we're from, because again, like we said, Oaxaca is so huge. It's like we had people from La Costa, from La Sierra, and it's just like there's always something we're going to be learning. And through that course then became Oaxacal, which is now a student-led org. That's how that started.
Oaxacal?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I like that.
And so Oaxacal started as a student organization, but also as a class. And then through that, after my time at Berkeley, we started seeing it pop up at USC, UCLA, and it's like, again, we need these community spaces, but also classroom spaces.
Yeah, maybe I can be faculty sponsor at SZN. I don't think, do we have
I don't know if SZN has one, but they should get one, yeah.
Do we have a Oaxacal at SZN?
I think, as many campuses as we could get that going, there's Oaxacans everywhere.
Yeah. One of the things that when I was in that world as an undergrad and I was trying to navigate these spaces, what really stuck out with me was when some of my peers that are Chicano would very proudly exclaim oh, I'm reclaiming my indigenous roots or I'm indigenous. But I'm like, are you really? Do you have a culture that claims you? Can you go back with an indigenous community in Mexico and will they know who you are and who your parents are?
That's what it boils down to. Because when Oaxacan Twitter was a thing, that conversation was so problematic. Telling the Chicanos that they're not indigenous.
Oh, really? I wasn't there.
Yeah, the claws would come out.
They would get so defensive. And I'm like, I understand, because you get fed a certain type of history too, which I understand. But take the defensiveness out of it. Just hear us out. This is what we mean. It all boils down to, if you go to where your parents are from, where your family history is from, and you say, I'm so-and-so's daughter, whatever, are they going to know you? Are they going to,
And do they speak an indigenous language?
Yeah.
Right? Do they still speak that language?
Yeah.
Can't for real, are you really indigenous, or are you just kind of saying it? Because also, I understand what they're trying to communicate, and it's just not articulated
I
in a
understand
manner.
the whole wanting to reclaim indigenous identities. I understand that, all power to that. But at the same time, there's this danger that comes with that, because it treats current indigenous communities as non-existent.
Correct. That's I completely agree.
And I think that's where it just, to not overcomplicate things, it all boils down to, I love how you said that, if you show up to your community, will they know you? And I think that's what we talked about earlier on this episode. All you have to do is, like us, Soy Bautista, and they all know us.
Yeah, same.
And it's And I think we talk, Melly and I are very involved in our community and like with other community, especially leaders. Like we talk about sometimes people weaponizing now the Oaxacan identity. They're Oaxacan, yeah, and cool, but they've never been actively in their communities. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people want to exploit the Oaxacan identity. And so you could very easily tell someone's not from that, like from the community when no one claims them. And it all just comes down to that. Like if no one claims you, then like who introduced you to these spaces?
Yeah. Who introduced you to these spaces? How are you navigating in these spaces? Because it goes a long way, the way that you carry yourself, right? Yeah. And so I've always told everybody, like, dude, I'm not here to gatekeep Oaxaca. I actually want to share my culture with everybody, but also respect it. Just respect my culture.
It all just comes down to that. Just approach it with a level of respect, and we won't have any issues. Because
I was having a conversation with my buddy. His name is Carlos Somoza. He actually did his master's, and he recorded an album as his thesis. Right? And he went to Central America and he did research on hip hop in Central America. And it was fantastic. And he's a teacher right now. He's a 7th grade educator, I believe he is. And he asked me one time, like, hey, how do you feel about people wearing like somewhere like your like indigenous clothing? And I was like, you know what? Like it's an interesting question, because if they're doing it like out of respect and they learned the history and they were like, oh, this was weaved by an indigenous community here, and I really want to show respect and I'm wearing it. I'm like, dude, that's awesome, by all means, but if they're trying to like exploit it and they're like, oh, I can sell you one for like $200. Yeah. I'm like, oh, that rubs me off the wrong way. Yeah. So interesting conversations. I'd love to introduce you to him too, because he's not Oaxacan. He's half Puerto Rican, half Salvadoran.
Oh, wow.
But he's been to Oaxaca. He knows Oaxaca more than I do. He knows places that I haven't been to. And he's the one that told me about my hatter. Hey, go check out this hatter, right? And so it's been a interesting journey developing my identity and kind of bringing all of my social circles together and just allowing them to interact rather than keeping them separated, because I think that talks volumes as to who I am. And if I ever meet somebody that doesn't like a certain social aspect that I'm involved in, well, then maybe we shouldn't be friends, right? Maybe we're not meant to hang out together, because this all encompasses who I am.
Very true. And earlier you asked if we at any point in high school had also that struggle of defining ourselves as Chicana or like just Zapotec, Oaxaqueña. I early on in middle school started bumping heads with even just Latinos in my school. So I took on that, like, I am Oaxaqueña. Like, there's no denying it, because I love what I do. I love who I am. And I think it was that, like, respect that I had to, like, really grasp early on. Mm-hmm. And then when it came to high school, I just happened to be a Oaxaqueña from Pico Union attending Belmont. And Belmont has a very historical, like, LA, there's a lot of LA history when it comes to Belmont. And I love learning about my neighborhood. So entering SZN right out of high school, which props or thank you, because you actually helped me like when applying to Cal States. Aww. And SZN was like one of them. Or I think just applying to college. And so I applied to SZN, and I actually did end up going into the Chicano Studies department, it wasn't my major, but I went in because I had journalism, which was, again, very just focused on like the media and like the current state of the world. But it didn't have me connecting directly to people that looked like me, or even just through academic settings or just history. I didn't really read much about Oaxaca unless I went in and like really dug into the archives, which is also something I love about YouTube, because YouTube was that connection back home. Like, I did get to see the rise of YouTube, and every single time I could, I would type in my pueblo exactly how it is, or just Oaxaca, Mexico. But even then, when I put Oaxaca, Mexico, I get bored because I'm like, no, I'm not interested, because at the end of the day, it's now 2026. It is so many folks being like, oh, I've been touring like Oaxaca, and like Canadians, Americans, any type of outside culture coming in. And I'm like, okay, tourism has always been a boom, but I want to know more about actual cultural like history. So I joined the Chicano Studies department just to help them, and I was part of the MECHA, the Movimiento Estudiantil. And even then, 2017, I want to say I did invite you over to perform, which
correct.
Shout out to you.
Iconic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's where we met. Like
in person.
we perform here. I was like, yeah, I'm down. You know.
Yes, and one of my favorite events, I was able to lead that one. And then I think the following year I brought Cuco over, so that was also great. Like me with music, I'm like, sign me up. I want to help. And both artists were able to say yes, so I was very happy about that. But I also quickly learned that, dang, even though I'm Mexican American, I also don't really feel like I am a Chicana. So where do I land? And Annie was in high school still, so I would always come back home and always have these conversations with both my sisters, because my older sister being a millennial who is 8 years older than me, and then Annie being my younger sister, 2 years younger than me. Also understanding that all three of us are different, even though we are daughters of Oaxaqueños. And out of all three siblings, I am the one that's I think I'm the most traditional one, where even then I'm like so different, because I bring a different perspective to the pueblo. Every time I go, they're like, ay, Melina, ¿qué te gusta participar, pero qué diferente eres, o qué interesante. Like, I just have so many different interests, but always rooted back to the pueblo, directly to the pueblo. I can't say Oaxaca.
Yeah.
I would still get lost.
No, I get it.
You're more of an expert in the city than I am.
You know what? I feel a sense of guilt for leaving the community the way that I did as a teenager, because I never went back. And now, since my parents moved back to Oaxaca, I really have no connection to any of the events that the Paisanos do anymore, or I don't know about any of these things anymore that I used to know about because of my parents, right? And so that sense of guilt is always there, where it's like, I never reintegrated with the community. I just kind of left as a rebellious teenager that was doing teenager extracurricular activities. And now I want to go back, and now I want to partake in the kermeses and partake in whatever fiestas they're in hopes that I still know a few of the paisanos, because a lot of them, like I said last time, are moving back. A lot of them are passing away because they're older. They were the first wave, remember, to come into Los Angeles. And so I want to try and do my part to keep the culture alive and maintain traditions and customs alive in any way that I can. I'm not saying that I have any sort of extensive network or there's anything that I can do, but if I can just be a spectator and participate within our community events, I'm more than happy to do that now as an adult, right? So I just got to get in touch with all my childhood friends again and see if they're still...
Or even, I mean, before we wrap up the conversation, just talking about like how the landscape of community has changed so much in the past 10 years, because back then what our parents had were the fiestas, the kermeses, the venta de comidas, and those are still very much present and ongoing and led by elders. But now what we see is an extension of younger community spaces popping up in LA. We have Oaxacan-led events, Oaxacan-based events, where it's like Oaxaqueños of all ages are welcome to come. But we didn't have that growing up, where it was really the only place you had to like be in a room full of Oaxacans was the kermeses and the venta de comidas and all
now,
that.
Let me ask you, how are those spaces with the younger crowd? Is it like a healthy space?
Yeah, I will say yeah, but it is different. Like the generational difference is very obvious. I think it's nice to see a new generation, claim a space in LA where it's like, this is where Oaxacans are going to get together. And like, I think the pandemic kind of shifted that in a good and bad way, because now they're also very present online. I can speak more in terms of like the Bay and like what I was doing in at Cal in terms of Oaxacan community. But actually, when I just moved from LA, IOC had just started, which was an indigenous coalition of mainly women who were leading it too, trying to address this issue of we need Oaxacan spaces in LA that are, a room where Oaxacans could just exist and be. So I will say the friends that we have, I feel like they've tried to lead it with this effort of it being safe, it being a welcoming community to all, but also going back to the conversation of knowing when to identify who's here just to exploit the image of being Oaxacan and who's really here because they they maybe don't feel as welcomed in the Fiesta de sus Pueblos, but they yearn for community, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah, I'd love to come to one of those events whenever the next one is. Let me know, please. I want to swing by.
I definitely think it's with the pandemic. One of the things with the upcoming event or the recent events that newer just groups have established, I don't only see folks from La Sierra, and I think that's beautiful. I can say that Los Valles Centrales have a big presence, and also that LA history, and that's for a whole other episode. But knowing that within Oaxaqueños that migrated over, we have our different communities that we ended up in. K-Town was very popular.
Yes.
Our parents also arrived mainly on Mariposa to like settle in LA, and then decided to like all live in one space, and then made their families, so they moved over, and we ended up in Pico Union. But Valles Centrales has been very present. The youth there also very down to like organize. They're
That's
about
great.
it. And then you have La Mixteca, Los Serranos. We're learning more about other like smaller pueblos coming into the conversation. So it's always nice to know that we're very much present. We're curious to continue learning and organizing together with the same, if not just a little bit more improved like organizing skills that our parents taught us.
Yeah, that's great.
I think that's also, it has helped both of us like just continue conversations. And luckily our mom was also always a very curious cat. Like she was just eager to learn, but also to help. So in any like kermeses or different meetings, she would be a note taker or the one that's greeting and charging at the door. So I learned those skills from my mom, and then now I'm like, oh, she gets to sit it out now.
Yeah.
It's our turn to like tap in and be of support. But I'm glad that at least we're present and having these conversations to acknowledge that there is changes that come with our experience in LA, but with the big and deep love for Oaxaca.
Community. It's always community, because again, within our community, like whenever somebody passed away, who did we depend on? The community. Like we all came together, right, and either bought food or gave our little 2 cents for the body to get sent back to Oaxaca, and it all just depended on community engagement and a sense of community for support. So if we can keep that going for the next generations to come, I think that would be great.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing, just sustaining that community and those efforts. I think we're seeing mutual aid now in different aspects. And I feel like as the landscape continues to change, we're going to see generations adjust different things of our traditions, but still in an effort to preserve them, which is nice.
Because I think going back to like the values, right? Like, you always greet everybody, every single person there. When you leave, you got to make sure that you say bye to everybody there. But I also saw the other end of that, where it's like, oh, like how much did they donate for this casualty that we had? Oh, let's write that down because we got to give that back whenever they have a casualty in their family, right? And so it was very like that for me. I don't know if it was necessarily like the healthiest, right? Growing up, keeping tabs on everything that was donated, right? But I mean, even little things like that later on in life I had to unlearn. So it's, for example, you never ask somebody how much money they make. Right. Whereas in the field that I'm in, they're openly talking about their income. Right. Oh, what are you doing to get to that income? Like, how are you doing that? Show me. Right. Whereas like, it's very taboo in my household to ask somebody how much they make. So things of that nature that I think, like you said, we're going to start to kind of pick and choose what we pass on and what we don't. I think it's up to us to pass on the better things. Because our parents didn't know any better. Right. Yeah. Mind you, they're coming from scarce resources. So when they get here, it's like you eat everything on your plate. You don't throw it away because when they grew up, they had nothing to eat. So to them, it's a big deal to throw away food, which it is to me still too, by the way. I'm saving it. I'm eating it later or I'm eating it tomorrow. Right.
That's real. No, that's so real. But yeah, I think I'm excited to see what this same conversation of identity looks like in another 10 years. Things are going to continue to change, but we hope that, as we pointed out, some aspects of navigating the Oaxacan identity in LA can be isolating, while some can be very, very community based and like rewarding in that sense of like when you find someone that's Oaxacan just casually in conversation, it's like you get so excited and so happy, right?
¿De qué parte?
Yeah, and it's like you immediately connect. We hope that continues to be seen at a greater scale now moving forward, especially with being like Oaxacan being like so popular right now, and like luckily we have the gift of being Oaxaqueños and in this room and having these conversations, and now accessible online for people to, you know, be able to just access and listen to this conversation and understand. Because sometimes we reach people who are not even from LA, but they're Oaxacan from like the East Coast or somewhere else.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that.
You know, like hearing their experiences too, it's like so different, but maybe so similar at the same time.
Yeah, where the community is not that big, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always interesting to like sit down and talk to other Oaxaqueños from LA, but now you know, you being from K-Town, the heart of Oaxaca Koreatown is right there, you know. We have Baja California and LA being addressed now as a corridor in down Pico and like
or the 9th region of Oaxaca. That's how I like to describe
so funny.
it.
Yeah, Oaxaca, California being the 9th region of Oaxaca, and like we're seeing a rise in people reclaiming this identity or like proudly claiming it now, where maybe you wanted to in the past, but again, because you're young, you get in your head, people bully you out of it. Now as an older or as an adult, you're actually like able to say, oh yeah, I'm Oaxacan, not Chicano, not, you know, Mexican American, soy Oaxaqueño. And like there's power to that. So I appreciate you for coming on and, you know, telling us more about what this experience was like. I know we touched a little bit on it during the first episode of Las Voces del Pueblo back in 2024, but now seeing the differences, the climate we're in right now in terms of just state of the world, is, I feel like it's more important now more than ever. But yeah, I just wanted to wrap up. Melly had a very fun thing to wrap up with, because we have to take it back to how we know you, Mr. Linoskiii.
Yes.
Skywalker.
So
We want to wrap up, and that way so people can go back and listen to your discography.
Yes.
Top 2-3 songs of Lino's. We want to start off with yours. What are your top 2-3 songs of yours that, I don't know, maybe you want to put people on right now?
I want to say one of the favorite songs I've written and recorded was a song called No Matter What off my Headphones Only album.
Shout out Headphones Only.
And I had my buddy James Allen, who I went to high school with. Very, very talented guy. He's worked with like top artists, Maroon 5 and all these things, like writing, etc. But no, I just went to high school with some very talented people, and I was like, hey, can you sing a hook for me?
Nice.
And he's like, I'll sing a hook for you. But I like the way that it was structured. I like the way that it came out. I like the way that Frank John James made the beat. And so that's one of my favorite songs, because it's storytelling at its core. And if you know anything about my music, I'm usually saying some sort of story, right? Some sort of story. So that's probably my favorite song that I've written. I like A Recap it's like my second favorite song, or one of my favorite songs as well, just because it entails like raw hip hop. It's just hip hop, DJing, scratching, and sharing stories from the neighborhood in K-Town. Right, from the neighborhood in K-Town. So those two are like my top 2 songs, and I'm sure there are others that I'm leaving out.
We'll name them.
For me, I was like top 5, and then Ani was like top 3. So
We're going to be here for a while.
and I was like, okay, for sure, Checa. I know it's a collab, but Checa, I feel like that was one of the top favorites when I first was introduced to who Linoskiii was or is.
It's so funny because I hated that song. Exer, my friend Exer made me record it, and we recorded it on a whim. And you know, my vocabulary is not as extensive in Spanish as it is in English. The puns, the wordplay, I can't move in Spanish the way that I do in English. So I recorded it like whatever, didn't think much of it. I think like 8 months went by, and Exer was like, yo, I want to shoot a video to that. And I was like, nah, fool, like, it's not even, he's like, fool, let's just do it. He's like, fool, let's just do it. And I was like, all right. And I can tell you how the video was shot. We just went around driving, right, in LA, and then we found a little construction site that was lit up, and we're like, let's go there.
This is the spot.
And we recorded there, and then we found a Home Depot, and we went to the rooftop of a Home Depot, and then we finished it up there in the stairs.
Way.
And that was that video.
Yay, now I know.
But that LA windbreaker, iconic for the video. I think what I liked about the music video is you could tell you guys were just having fun.
We were.
And I think that's the beauty.
We were having fun. We were just cruising in the car.
Exactly.
Like, let's shoot it. All right, let's shoot it right there.
But again, how cool is it? You guys mentioned Twitter. There's so many things that I love about the song. And then the English, Spanish of it.
That was my favorite.
It's one that to this day, I just replay it and I love it. So second one, I would say Coffee Growers.
That one's a good one.
Even then, I love that you have only selected songs have their music videos. So I know that one does include its music video. Lastly, it is Sunflowers for me. I love it. Sunflowers is such a good song. And I could only come up with 3, so I'll stick with those. We'll leave it at that in.
I think Sunflowers is so on brand for you, though. For those that don't know, me, Melly, and our other sister, we have matching tattoos. That was my first ever tattoo. And we all picked the flower. I'm the lavender, our older sister's the rose, and Melly's the sunflower.
No way,
I love
really?
that's your choice, too.
Wow.
I think that's so perfect for you. Mine, I had told Melly, Checas is on my list, too. I think funny. I love that one. Again, just the English, Spanish of it all. Levas.
Oh, yeah. I like that one.
Put respect on Lino's name.
I like that song, too.
Yes, you went off, and I'm like, okay, period.
Yeah,
Let them know who really is from K-Town, you know?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. I was feeling some type of way, you know? Yeah. So I was like, dude, I'm from here.
Yeah, you know, give that song the respect it deserves. Yeah.
Funny enough, coming back to the episode today, you do address the whole Valley K-Town experience. So the fact that Levas is one of the songs that for any gentrifier out there.
I'm from LA, you're from the outskirts. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, yes.
You know, because if you go outside of LA, nobody's going to know where you're from. So you have to say you're from LA. Yeah.
No,
right?
I laugh at that because I think that's a big, when I went to college, that was a lot of like people saying, oh yeah, I'm from LA. And then me being like, oh, what part? And then I'm like, you're from the Valley.
You're from the IE.
You're from the IE.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm from Pico Union.
So like LA. Yeah, LA.
So love Levas. And then I Got Love.
I got love.
I love just because of the shout outs you have at the end as well.
Yeah, I think I shouted out everybody that was in the scene at the time.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean we had a little scene going. Like the Southern California had a little hip hop movements and
putting West Coast on the map.
Right. People were listening.
The history of underground hip hop in LA with the Cypher Effect, what you guys were doing, like it's history that should continue to be recognized.
Because the scene that I grew up with was like I don't know if you guys are familiar with Project Blowed, but it was the Blowdian scene.
Oh no.
And so that was like that was who I aspired to like be like the people that were at the Blowed, right? Wow. Because I got introduced to the Blowed through a nonprofit called Juice, Justice Unified and Creative Elements.
Okay, Juice I've heard of.
And so I used to go there for the graffiti when I was a teen, and that's how I met my first like interaction with somebody that rapped was at Juice, my homie Joe Self, right? And so he brought me up. He's like, hey, come up to the studio, and I went up there and I heard him record and other people record. And I was like, oh man, it was the first sense of it's tangible, like it's there, right? But I wasn't rapping back then. I started rapping way later. And so I wanted to be like the Blowdians, right? And so the last wave of Blowdians were like Dumbfounded and Satire and those people. Those were the younger Blowdians, which I think they closed the books after that, right? So there was that. And back then, the way that you promoted yourself, you had to go to concerts and you had to give out your CDs. You had to bring your CDs. You had to give them out. You had to sell them physically. And I had the luck of, dude, we transitioned to YouTube, right? So I could put something on YouTube and just share it with people, right?
Yeah.
And
Would you hand out USBs?
I didn't do that, but yeah, some of my homies did that. Yeah.
Like, I'll send you my link.
Yeah, so it was like I could just send out a link now and do all these things, and it was great. We created a little following. We had our own little like culture going. We had our own little community going.
The gear, like the merch, so iconic.
No, and people still revisit those videos.
Yeah,
like the music videos, all of that. I was just the other day listening to SP's album on Bandcamp, and I was just like, damn, I haven't done this in a minute. Long time. Because I went back to I work in music, and I was just on Bandcamp, and I'm like, I used to love Bandcamp listen to all the tracks.
Yeah, you know? Dude, I think what was missing there was like a veteran in the game to kind of like help guide and mentor and be like, hey, you probably should do this or you probably should do that.
In the age of AI, I think now You guys should like lead workshops and be like, you know what, pen to paper, get it down now.
Shout out to the young MCs. If y'all need, someone to guide you, let us know.
I used to just play a beat for an hour until I got 1 or 2 lines down, right? And then once I just got that initial like 2 bars down, I could build off of it and I could go off of it, Yeah. And so that was the hardest for me. Now with all this time crunch, it's like difficult to do that now. I'm writing in my car, memorizing it, or something, I'll forget it. So I'm like, I forgot what I said. So I'll voice record now. Oh, okay. It's very therapeutic for me now to write.
I love that.
Yeah,
like
please
music
don't stop writing.
Yeah.
I may never listen to it, but don't stop writing.
I released a song, I think it was maybe last year or a few months ago, called Iced Americano. But I didn't promote it. It was more therapeutic again.
I went back to your, on Apple Music, I went back to your page. I'm like, when did he release this? And why did we not know about this? Love it though.
Yeah.
Also, before we leave, I don't know if anyone on Instagram has struggled with this, but Headphones Only is somehow not on Instagram. I don't know why.
Really?
Like Instagram Music?
No way.
At least I haven't seen it. Maybe after this, I'll
She always talks about how she can't add it to her stories.
Really?
Yeah.
I need to check.
That's my favorite album.
Instagram, if we could
Mine
do
too.
something about that. Yeah,
Mine
Headphones
too.
Only, yeah.
That was my like pride and joy.
Yeah.
That is one of my proudest creative projects that I've ever done,
Well, with that being said, then go stream Headphones Only, please, in honor of Linoskiii.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We always have such a great time talking to you on and off camera, but
Thank you very much.
maybe next time we have you on just for a full hour about like music and,
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to say one last thing. Headphones Only was recorded by a man named Robert E.Q. Diaz. Rest in peace. He passed away, but he helped me out tremendously when it came to recording music and being a resource for me. So shout out to Bobby. Bobby, I miss you. I love you. Rest in peace, EQ.
Shout out to Bobby.
Thank you so much for your time. For those listening, please get to watch this on YouTube, stream it on all your listening platforms. But this is a wrap for Las Serranitas, Voces del Pueblo.
Bye, y'all.
My name's Linoskiii. I thought y'all knew. Linoskiii hit me with the contact. I'm from